Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Um, Live from Canada today. I am sitting in the living room of Penny. A lot of you know Penny from various classes and that sort of stuff. This is her house, and she has graciously allowed me to use her living room because I have to be up here today. I have a recording session in Vancouver in a little bit later this afternoon. So I came up here early so I could hang out here with you guys in Canada instead of the United States. I like it up here. Anyway, hello everyone and welcome. Because I do have a tighter schedule, I'll be stopping a little earlier today, so I thought I would forego the original, the little discourse I do in the beginning and dive right into the questions. Also because no subject came to me to talk about. So if it doesn't come, there's nothing I can talk about. But we do have people here that are have already joined us. There's Roberto and Rosario, and Roberto did have a question right out the get-go. So his question is, GP, if you are never the doer, who is doing when you are doing? If you do not take action, life will pass in front of you without doing. What is laziness or not taking action, etc.? Well, for some of you, that might actually be kind of a new statement that you've heard, or you may have heard it and go, what are they talking about? There is no doer. And so let me take a second and just kind of describe what that means. But let's do it by just examining the process that we normally associate with doing. Non-dual inquiry is always experiential. It's not about, it's not intellectual, right? So what we want to do is we want to look at the experience we have when we are engaged in action, right? Because obviously action is taking place all the time. You could say there's no doer. Well, gee, you're doing this. And yes, in the way we normally express these things, you say, I'm doing this. You say, I'm driving home. You don't say, driving home is happening, right? So remember, in everyday parlance and our conventional way of doing things and our conventional way of thinking and acting and talking to each other about life, we don't need to get into the, this specific non-dual splitting of hairs, right? Now, that said, I talked about, I drove up here today. Driving was a doing. I went through the border and I had to get a COVID test before I came here, and a bunch of things that had to happen, all of which in everyday parlance, I would just say, I did them. I went and got this. I went to here. I put gas in the car, all that kind of stuff, right? So let's just put that aside, though, because when you're talking about non-dual inquiry, you're trying to look at a different perspective. You're trying to look more deeply into the underlying existential environment in which all of this is happening. So when a spiritual teacher, a non-dual teacher, says something like, there is no doer, first off, no teacher should just say that without creating some context for you, so you can understand what in the world they're talking about, right? Now, if we look at what actually happens, right, when we're talking about doing something, there's a whole series of events that take place in sequence. An idea comes up, right? And behind that idea is some motivation, right? Some kind of impulse to act, right? And you do. You follow it, the body moves, this happens, and then I say, I did that, right? Now, interestingly enough, this phenomena was first noticed about back in the 70s with the invention of the biofeedback machine, which they started using for training people, it just kind of, they say they started using it for meditation. Even Swami Rama at the Himalayan Institute used it for helping to teach meditation. But there was an interesting phenomena that they noticed in the biofeedback machine, and that was that the will to act, or the sense of doing something, occurred, showed up as patterns in the brain after the action had already started. Now, they thought that might just be some kind of mistake, some kind of an anomaly with the biofeedback machines. It was, early technology. But with the arrival of the MRI, which was extremely accurate, it was confirmed. The impulse to action, the recognition of that action, actually happened at different times, and the recognition was after the impulse to act. So it actually is in the nervous system, action, and then the cognitive recognition of that action, and then the sense, I did that, the thought, I did that, or I am doing this. If I do it in slow motion, it would kind of look like this. I'm going to raise my arm. So from the point of view of our normal way of doing things, it's irrelevant, right? Do or not do it, it doesn't matter. We're only looking at this to get the sense of who you really are, right? Now, you'll hear me talk a lot about the conditioning, the way the nervous system functions, how it functions, and why it functions in the way that it does. Something happens in the environment, a response takes place, right? So now, the doctor, hit your knee with that little hammer, right? Did you do that, right? See, remember, the doing is a sense of doing, right? And the thing is that the action and our sense of doing that action occur so close together in time that they blur in our minds. But my cognizance, your cognizance of an action, right, that place at which you recognize something happened, actually takes place a very short time after the actual event. And based on that is the idea, I did that. Remember, to the non-dual perspective, the I is only a thought. There's never anyone doing anything. There's only the functioning of life that's happening. And the act of thinking, the act of acting, the act of seeing something, the act of looking at an opportunity and either doing it or not doing it, right, is all just happening, right? And the only reason it feels personal is because there is this belief that I am this body. There is an I that is doing it. That is a specific, individualized, personal I that is doing it. There's no I. I mean, you don't think of I'm growing hair. You don't think of I'm digesting food, or I'm pumping blood, or I'm secreting chemicals to do whatever. We don't think of those in those terms. There's this very small percentage of things that we take a personal responsibility for. And what I'm trying to point out is that personal responsibility is purely conceptual. That nothing of life is actually done by an individual. It is simply life functioning. Now, this is really important because there's this sense then that, okay, I'm not the doer. That means doing doesn't happen. But isn't that the feeling that you're the doer? I'm not the doing of my breathing. So am I stopping breathing? Right? The sense that I'm a doer appears to us in two different ways. Well, oh, there's no doer, so nothing's getting done. No, everything is getting done, but the doer is not personal. There's not some personal being or personal God or personal anything that's doing something, right? That is as an act of will, right? I always like to use the metaphor of the jazz player who's improvising. they're playing, yes, but what's happening is very spontaneous. They're not doing it, right? There's no active will. There's no volition. There's no thought process. It's a spontaneous appearing in the moment. And that's a great example because it's a powerful, it's a brilliant, it's a creative effort, right? That would appear to require volition behind it. But but you can see that there isn't any, not an improvisation. There can be somebody writing a piece of music. It's easier to think that there's somebody doing it. But from somebody who's written many, many pieces of music, I can tell you, I have no idea. I mean, I'm just following what's coming, right? And I could say that I'm responsible for it. It's coming from my brain or something from some other, special consciousness, or God's communicating it to me in some way. I'm not sure I can say that. Beethoven can say that. I'm not sure I can say that. But nonetheless, there's a sense of it coming from somewhere. And then we just imagine that there's this personal intelligence that is creating it. And in fact, the whole idea behind there being creation is based on the same model, right? That all of creation, there must have been a creator, and the creator must have been personal and an active will. That one day, even though there weren't any days, this creator says, I think I'm going to make a universe, right? And he makes a universe, right? Out of, I don't know, whatever, right? So you have to realize that you can't take action and you can't not take action. It happens, right? Now, when something comes along, right, an opportunity, let's say, right, if you not take action, life will pass in front of you without doing. But again, you can see it's exactly the same thing, right? That somehow I'm the one that's doing it, or I'm the one that's not doing it. Look closely and you'll see that something will pop up, an opportunity, let's say, right? Which is what you would say just goes by. And that would mean, it's passing me by, right? The opportunity comes, right? Now, first off, it might not even be recognized as an opportunity, right? That's actually an interpretation of it. An event takes place that's totally neutral. And now you experience in some way, is this an opportunity? Is this a scam? Is this something I can take advantage of? Is this something that will take advantage of me? And you can see in that quagmire, you're running into all of the beliefs about you, about your experience, about your abilities, about all of that, right? That is all the extra baggage. All that's actually happened is an event has taken place, an event that requires a response. When you recognize that there's no doer, right? And also see very deeply into the nature of our conditioning, right? We'll separate ourselves out from the idea that there's anything that could be done or not done. There could be any opportunity that would be lost or gained. In which case, when you are free of that conditioning and you're not the doer of something, the entire system now is absolutely ripe for acting in the most intelligent and creative way, because it's not encumbered by conditioning any longer. So now what it is there is an event that took place in the universe, and then there's the universe responding to it. The universe is responding to it. You call it me, I say, no, it's not you, it's the universe doing it. And your only job here as the conscious awareness is to see the difference, is to break down the idea that there's a personal doer, liberating all action from a confined sense of me doing something, disposing of that me. You get, well, who's doing? The universe. That's the only thing you could say. And so is the universe doing, like an active will? Is there a personal being there? And the more you explore it, the more you find, no, there isn't. There's just this incredible thing happening. And notice, look at every single object, especially in nature. It's really easy to see in nature. It's a human body, a tree. I'm looking at one out the window here, right? that tree is a happening. Nobody did the tree, and the tree isn't doing leaves, right? Right? It's not figuring out how it's going to make leaves done, and it's not saying, I'm going to lose the opportunity for leaves, right? Leaf life is just going to pass me by. There's nothing, there's no sense of that at all. But if you look at anything, no matter how solid the object is, you will see that that object isn't a solid object, it's a flow. That there's not a single point where something is done. Everything is this flow that's constantly transforming from one thing into the next, to the point where what's a thing at all? You can take it apart and you won't find a thing. I mean, that is where science has gotten to, right? They've already done it. They've broken everything down. The atom is long gone, right? This idea of these little tiny balls that make something up is long gone. There's nothing there, right? And yet there is. It's the brilliant paradox of the universe. So what we lose is the sense of personal responsibility. And in so doing, we lose both fear and we lose greed. We lose the need to hold on to something and the fear of losing out. Because how can the universe lose out on anything? It's everything. Hopefully that helps for you, Roberta. Beautiful, beautiful. And yes, this is really important, because this is how we free ourselves from fear. Fear belongs to the sense that there's somehow me as this limited, finite thing trying to make sense of life. Starting with a finite capacity and then trying to make sense of that which is so vast and complex and intricate in its structure that there's simply no way a limited notion could possibly understand it. You have to let go of who you think you are. You are the consciousness that in which the universe is appearing. And it's not a personal, individualized consciousness. It is a universal consciousness that contains everything. And so there's no limits on you. All limits on you are the mind's version of you. And the act of that creating a limit is the creating of the person. That person is only an image in the mind and doesn't really exist. So see yourself as the universal, as pure consciousness, and the question will simply be a moot point. It goes beyond doer or doing and not doing, to this other place that is just transcendent of all those opposites. So thank you, Roberto. Hello, Liza. Hello, David and Elaine. Good to see everybody. Peter in Italy. Good evening. Nice to be here again. Thank you. There's Nazrin in Ireland. Hello, Nazrin. There's Milo. Name's so nice, they named him twice. Hello, GP and everyone. Is it really true that some physical pain in the body can relate to the chakra if it's located on or close to the chakra? And if yes, how and why? Well, first, I have to, let's see. Well, I do teach things about the chakras, but what I teach is very different than the traditional models of them. Because the traditional model that was diluted, right, thinks of them as kind of energy fields inside the body. Now, if that's all there was to it, we would have to be able to explain, well, what's the body then that these things are inside of, right? And if they are, then they could affect the body in some way. But if we're looking at it purely in terms of the body, there's no evidence of the existence of these. Like there's no evidence for the existence of the meridians in acupuncture. There's no physical structure Right? So we're out of the realm of allopathic medicine and materialistic science into a realm that it's pure speculation. Right? So we have to look where can we put a stake in the ground in this. Now, if you look at the model of the chakras, the original Kundalini model, it was representing something extremely significant. The lower three chakras, the root chakra, I forgot, I can't remember the second chakra and the third chakra, the sacral and the solar plexus, represent animal nature, instinctual nature, and they represent basically the same characteristics that every critter has to a certain degree. I mean, if you're looking at a one-celled animal in the ocean, it has that first chakra energy of survival, right? That's what it's there for. It then it represents this crossover point to to the three higher level chakras, which represent spiritual life, right? The emergence from the instinctual, and in the middle is the heart. It's the crossover point between the purely spiritual, you could even say the purely non-dual, and the purely physical or instinctual, or you could say the dualistic. And traditionally, it was always, there was the line going up with the chakras, and there were two snakes curled around it. And the snakes, of course, are, well, not of course, in those traditions, are associated with rebirth and immortality, because they shed their skin. They become completely new creatures. And so it really represents our awakening from our purely instinctual nature, excuse me, into the birth of spiritual life. This also symbolizes the cross as a crossover point in the heart. The connection between the divine and the earth, heaven and earth, the divine and the human. It is the place where it is the true place of non-duality. And so now, when I start teaching them, I use each one of the chakras as a metaphor, as an archetype that represent an aspect of consciousness. And so for me, it isn't, chakras are not in the body. The body itself is the first chakra. Everything that has to do with all physical form, this, what you might call the lowest vibration, the slowest vibration. Let's not put it lowest, because that has a pejorative associated with it. The slowest vibration, like red light, is the slowest vibration of light. But isn't it light? Is it any less light than violet or ultraviolet? And there's even slower, the infrared, right? Which is even slower, right? That we don't really accommodate. But the physical realm that we experience is the first chakra, right? Now, when I teach it in inner reconciliation, I use it as a map, because while I don't think, and I don't think the original intention of these was to say that there were these spinning vortexes of light located in the body, that they're all different vibrational frequencies, for lack of a better term, of the very same essence, the very same substance. They are therefore interrelated. And therefore, each one of these energies, as they get higher in vibration, is still reflected in all the others, right? So it's like mirrors upon mirrors, right? So whatever's going on in the archetype of, of the visionary, which is the sixth chakra, the third eye and all that, is going to be reflected in the first chakra of the body. And so you can actually use that therapeutically in a model. If somebody's got a tension and they're holding a particular tension, say in the lower dantian, right? That corresponds to the second chakra, which I call the nymph, right? And that's an area of desire, of pleasure, of the capacity to ask for what you want and be willing to receive it. And therefore, I will say to someone, it's a clue. It's not an absolute, but it's a clue. If there's some tension there may be something going on with the fact that they feel inhibited. They can't reach for what they want. Maybe they feel sinful, and we all got that, right? I mean, it's one of the basic things that happens. The baby doesn't do anything. It's all given, but eventually the baby starts reaching for things. And when you reach for that wrong thing, whack, you learn about it and something recoils. It goes back. That happens enough. And this whole energy will be shut down, and there'll be a tension there that'll carry right into life. Now, I always caution, this is not a chart. Okay, this is a feeling, this is the problem. I mean, this is not symptom diagnosis, drug, symptom diagnosis, drug, right? It's not that. It is a hint, it's a clue, right? So you can see reflected in the body various kinds of parts of us that are stuck, that are confused, someplace where we've adopted a posture, right? Okay, I'm going to stay in my visionary. I'm just going to be the creative, and I'm just not going to feel any of this lower stuff down there. Then, of course, you're frustrated because nothing you do ever makes it, ever seen in this world. It all remains in your head. So these are the kind of things that you can use to help you begin to kind of diagnose stuff. So if you have a physical pain in the body, it may be related to the chakra if you know what the chakras mean, right? If you look at them from the point of view of being archetypes of consciousness and not physical things. So I would not be wearing, yellow glasses or red underwear or something to try to unstick the chakra. Now, that said, it may have something to do with that. But the nature of trauma, right? If there's some kind of traumatic thing that is behind the physical pain, the disruption in the energy system that has eventually manifested as that symptom, it is not necessarily correlated to the chakras. It just means there's some stuck energy. There's some trauma that has not been resolved. And a trauma is always something that you couldn't feel at the time. You couldn't resolve that energy because you couldn't fight and you couldn't flee. So the nervous system kind of packaged it up and stuck it somewhere in the body. So it isn't necessarily related to those same images, those same archetypes. Right? Now, the way to unravel all of that, thank God we don't have to figure this out with our heads. Go, oh, is it that? Is it not that? Is it this chakra? Is it related to this chakra? Is it moving? You could get really wrapped up in your shorts. So instead, what I do is I just give attention to the physical pain or discomfort itself, okay? And not assume anything about it. Especially if it's an acute pain, right? If it's kind of this tension, it's more likely that it's kind of a general shutdown of a particular aspect of yourself. If it's a specific pain, it may not be, right? In which case, I just go to the pain, right? Be present with the pain. Ask the pain, what do you want to show me? Can you help me? Can you help me help you release whatever is here that needs to be released? Because the knowledge of what happened, why it happened, why it stuck, and how to unstick it is in the pain itself. It is in the actual experience. It's not in the head. The head will analyze and diagnose, but it'll all be based on charts and diagrams and memories, right? It won't be based on the direct experience, which is always much more subtle and nuanced and have combinations of all sorts of different things involved in it. But it always goes back to some kind of a childhood trauma or deprivation. And I can say that with confidence just from my experience, but I don't have any authority. Of course, I'm not a medical doctor, but there are plenty of medical doctors who have become quite outspoken. The most notable being Gabor Mate, that every disease, with few exceptions, right, is the result of childhood trauma. And therefore, that physical pain isn't in the body per se. It's reflected in the body, but the real source of it is this denied part of myself. It's the part of me I simply do not have access to. It cannot function harmoniously. It's stuck, and it's kind of beating against beating against the walls. So that's a long-winded explanation, but hopefully that all makes sense to you. And so thanks for that, Milo. I'm sure everyone will tell me if that didn't make sense. Hello, Bob in Serbia. There's Lisa. There's Lisa, and there's Dorte. Hello, Dorte in Denmark, and there's Lisa. I'm up there. I'm with the Canucks now. Hey, Sue. There's Sue in South Africa. There's Melissa K. Hello to you. With clapping hands. Suzanne, hi, G. Why are there so few female spiritual teachers in comparison to the male teacher? I heard some men commenting on it in a negative way, like it's harder for women to be enlightened. but I think that's really nonsense. Yes, I know. There was a time when it was believed that women had to just because they were going to have babies, right? And culturally, that was her job, so she didn't have time to become enlightened, right? She had to have babies, and there was a time when she had to have a rebirth as a man. In the Christian tradition, believe it or not, there was a time when it was believed that women didn't have a soul, right? That they were not a sentient entity, that they were there just for men, and for the truly righteous men, they were there as a sheer temptation for them. So there's a lot of stupid ideas, all right, and that's one of them, right? The idea that the sentient human being, which is the appearance of self-aware consciousness, the form it happens to take it restricts the possibility for self-awareness and for self-realization. It's just absurd. Now, why are there so few in comparison to male teachers? I think it's just the cultural bias, the tradition that women teach children and men teach adults and that sort of thing. I mean, it used to be university was nothing but male teachers. It's not the case anymore. To this day, you look at the universities, the colleges for degrees in engineering and science. Very few women. Is it because you're not capable of understanding the complexity of all that? Nonsense. I know women who are incredibly smart. When it's that kind of thing, they can run circles around me. It's like, yeah, okay. So it's cultural bias, it's cultural prejudice because of the nature of culture. They're still trying to steer women away from it. When I was in high school, which was a long time ago, but it's in the 1960s, in the midst of all that the turmoil, there was still the future housewives of America. I don't think that exists anymore. Hopefully it doesn't. So it is simply, I think, just a cultural bias. I remember, 20 years ago, you go to a self-help event, the audience would be 95% women, and the speakers would be 100% men, right? Not true anymore. The ratio is there's way more men that are engaged in consciousness and self-expression and liberating ourselves from traditional roles, and there's far more women on the stage, and there's far more women taking leadership roles on the stage, and there's more women emerging in the realm of spiritual teacher. There's actually a lot of Gabriel Bernstein, right? There's this Teal Swan. There's a couple of new young ones I've seen. Elisa Carnes, Cindy Teven, and so it's happening, right? It's happening. It's slow simply because just like in politics and every other aspect of culture, men don't want to give up the dominance they've given themselves. It didn't earn it. It wasn't, they want to say, oh, this is God's way. And in all the Abrahamic religions, all of them, bar none, woman is supposed to be subordinate to the man, right? That's her job. So even if he's a total total doofus, right? She has to do what he says. And let's face it, the Abrahamic religions, there's more people in that than any other, like several billion, right, who believe that way. Now, obviously, there's a whole continuum of beliefs about it. You know, some are much more progressive and liberal, some are very conservative and strict. And so I think that's just it. And the walls are breaking down. So, you know, for any woman now developing this kind of spiritual prowess and wisdom and awakening, the stage is open, right? And is continuing to open. When we see teachers like Gangaji or Amma and a few, and there's been stories about Zen masters being women and great yogis being women. It's happening. If the men start commenting on a negative way, the most appropriate response is a facepalm. Oh God, not this, because it's just ignorant. It's old. It's useless. It's total nonsense, and just it doesn't stand up to scrutiny, right? All you have to do is remove from it the cultural bias, and it just completely falls apart. So, oh, thank you for bringing that up. That's it. It's an important one. Yeah, it's a very important one. I want to see way more spiritual teachers, because I think that kind of leadership is needed by women in general to help lead women in general out of the patriarchal era and into the era where we are. Well, we're led more by the feminine principle, and the masculine principle fulfills its role, which is kind of a container and a protector of the feminine. That's a whole world I could talk about in of itself, and I'm going to in the upcoming classes on for women and men, which I have not been ready to announce yet, but will be coming soon. Ava, my dear Ava, love from Poland. Sean. Hey, GP, Vancouver Island is awesome. Glad you're able to visit. I'm tripping myself out with some thoughts lately. Maybe you can help. Well, let's see. I don't like plastic bottles. I'm even embarrassed that I'm using one, but I forgot mine on the way, and I had to have some water on the way here. Anyway, I feel like knowing of anything takes time, but there's only now. So where does knowing happen? Like, how can a contrast between two colors be seen without time to process that? It feels like it just pops into a feeling instantly, but also takes time. Feels paradoxical. That's because it is. Time does not exist as an objective entity, okay? It's not a thing in and of itself, right? This is the confusion. We say, well, there's no time, right? There's no time. There's only now, right? But we think of now as this time slice, don't we? What if now is all of it, including all time, right? When you're talking about the timeless, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that time does not exist independently from events. Matter of fact, without time, there are no events. Without time, there's no dancing. There's no music. There's no film or drama or literature. There's no dance, right? You know, great dance or just, you know, funky chicken in your bedroom. So the thing is that they arise simultaneously. The event and time are one. You can't. They're dependent arising, as Buddha put it. As Buddha put it. He's my new hero, Buddha. Buddha G. Anyway, it's just like take objects out of space and you don't have space. Einstein said that. He said that no objects, no space, because space is defined by the content, right? So space is simply the relative distance between two objects. Time is the relative distance between two events. And it's totally relative, right? And space and time are related and all of that kind of stuff. So what is timeless is that which is witnessing time. That is, time being a series of events. Take away all events, and time does not exist. Take away thoughts, mind does not exist, right? Take away the motion of wind, of air, wind does not exist. These are all words that speak to a flow or a functioning and are not an object. So when you're talking about time, what you're talking about is simply an abstraction. What we experience is a series of events. And that series of events we measure. This was faster, this was shorter, these were quarter notes, these were 16th notes, right? This was a long motion, this was a short motion, but you can see they're just relative comparisons, right? And so time, people want to think of time as this flow. It's this thing, right? So time is affecting me, right? But there's not a time pushing events along. Time and events are one. Time and the flow of events are one. You can't separate them. And this is the mistake that makes it confusing. Well, take away time, well then how do you do that? Or how did you put it? Everything, knowing of anything takes time. Yes, but there's only now, right? So the knowing of something is a process unfolding in the experience of time. But every single moment that you might want to look at it, like every single moment that is unfolding, right, is being viewed in the now. Right? You could almost see it as like you're looking through a fence, right? A little slit in the fence, and an elephant walks by, right? And now you see the trunk, and now, you know, the tip, and then the trunk, and then the ears, and the head, and this big gray thing, like a wall goes by, and then the tail. The elephant exists in its totality right there, but you only experience it a little at a time. Just like right now, right? You know, I exist in my totality, right? But you are only experiencing just a time slice of it as it moves by. It's the same relationship with your own life, right? Life has just been a series of events. That's all it is. And I've given it a narrative and call it my life. But in fact, it's just been a series of events, right? Have happened in this particular way, in this particular order. And because of memory, which is really useful, you know, I actually get to experience something as something that's beyond time, like a piece of music. If you look at a piece of music, I'm only hearing the music that's sounding in that moment, whatever that little chime slice, you know, the chords and the orchestration and all of that. But if there was no memory, I wouldn't recognize the theme. Now you can recognize that those are all variations on a theme, can't you? But if I didn't remember the first one, like a goldfish, by the time I got to this one, I said, "Oh, it's a new theme," right? So the now is the place from which everything is observed, but it is not a slice in time. It is the timeless space or place, which you can't even define, right? Through which everything is moving, right? Which gives the impression of motion in time and space. The fact of the matter is, to consider the depth of time, the timelessness, is that the events actually aren't moving past a point in time. That would mean they existed in some form prior to the perceiving of them, and then maybe existed in some form afterwards, like the elephant passing through the slot. What if the flow that appears as time is actually being generated real time in this split second, in this moment, from the now? then the appearance of time would simply be an appearance necessary for there to be a meta experience, but every single little aspect of it is spontaneously generated in this moment. That, in fact, is what's happening. And so time is not something that exists independently. It doesn't actually exist at all. And in that sense, you can understand that it doesn't exist, but any more than anything, any more, I was talking before that the tree exists in some static state. The tree is also in time, isn't it? Everything is appearing, one thing after another, constantly transforming. And the word we have for that constant transformation, which is sitting in the presence of the now and originating in the now, spontaneously generated by the now, we call that time and space. Does that help? Does that answer it for you? Oh, I hope so. There's Annette. Hello, Annette Rockstar. Namaste. What effect does music have on the body and mind? Well, the beautiful thing about music is that it bypasses the mind and goes directly to the body. You do not need mind for music. You know, I got trained in music, so I use the mind, and it helped me actually write music better. But the actual act of writing music didn't come from the mind; it came from somewhere else altogether. You put on a cool groove, and a 2-year-old will start to groove. Right? They'll start to dance. They don't know what it is, right? Because music comes from the body. The music is very much in the heart and in the body. It is the rhythm of the body. When it gets too removed from that, it becomes really uninteresting because, you know, like pop music, commercial music, right, which is just kind of imitating the real groove, right, which is very primitive, drum circles and that sort of thing. And, you know, came from in modern music, the blues, which you know, first the black spirituals, which came and became blues, which became jazz, became rock and roll, right, which eventually became commercialized into whatever the bland pablum is we have to suffer through these days. But it was always there was always this primitive energy behind it. It was just in our nature itself. So you could say it is in the body, right? So music, if, in that sense, the effect that it has on the body is that the body recognizes its own. It says, that's me. I get it. And we all can't help it. You know, you'll be sitting there listening to something, your foot will start tapping. You know, I don't care if it's a polka, right? Or if it's a really cool groove, right? Or if it's something just very, very primitive or polyrhythmic. You'll just respond to it. You can't help it, right? And so if we start taking things like that, feeling them rather than thinking about them, the impact they have on the mind is to get the mind dropping out of its analytics, really becoming quiet and becoming more expressive it becomes the servant of creativity rather than the dictator of it. It's not trying to analyze and explain. It can take on the role of a creative expression. In a sense, you know, the creator energy, which is the fifth chakra, is the mind. When it has been freed from all of its abstractions, it's in its conceptions and its framework of assumptions, it begins to move with creativity, and it becomes a beautiful continuum between mind and body until they really both they both kind of dissolve into each other, and it is just this pure wisdom, compassion. It's the goddess Kanzion or Kanon or Quinyon. She's known by a whole bunch of different names. So all of music can have that effect. You know, whether it be meditation music, which, you know, purposely does not lay down a particular rhythm, because if there's a rhythm, the mind tends to focus on it, and the body responds. Right? The body responds to the rhythm. There's just kind of this calming, you know, it becomes like white noise, right? Like, which is like, waves on the ocean. A lot of nature signs are just white noise. They have this tendency to just kind of bring us into not the rhythm of life, but almost the background, the om of life. And so it can affect all sorts of things, but also remember while it's affecting it, it's also coming from it. It's not, there's this music out here affecting the body. It's the continuum between the music. It's affecting the body because that's where it came from, right? It's born right in it and is simply being reflected back to it. That's its incredible power. It's like looking in a mirror, you recognize yourself. So hopefully that helps. Love stuff about music, obviously. I'm a musician. I love it. More water for me. Thank you. Penny is bringing me some water. Let's see. Did I get it? Yes. Okay. There's Mary. I'm listening. Oh, wise one. Facebook user. That's probably Harrison. Never one to let me get anywhere near being sanctimonious. Thank you, old friend. Karen, hey there. Somehow I find this season quite depressing. The fact that it's dark so long and cold. Winter even more. Any recommendation? Thanks a lot. Yes. Take good care of yourself. Walk out there in nature. Don't stay away from even when it's winter, right? Bundle yourself up and see if you can feel the energy of the season. Now, it's very true. There are some people that are very sensitive to the light, and when the light gets when the days get shorter, they tend to get depressed. What that really means is the energies go lower. They're designed to. As the day gets compressed, our life used to be driven completely by the lengths of the day because, we had some fire, right? Eventually we had fire, but, basically we had to work in the light, and we're not nocturnal beings. We can't see in the dark. And so our day naturally did this. And so our nighttime activities were very, very different. There are those sun lamps. There's lights that are made for people who have a serious problem with the light deprivation that comes with the fall and the winter. Those can be useful. I know people that have them and say it helps. But I think we have to have a respect for our natural biorhythms, you might say. Our natural. Oh, there's a word for it. I can't remember it now. Circadian rhythms, right? We just kind of have to work with your own body. Change your diet in different times of the year. Because remember, the body evolved in such a way that we didn't go to the grocery store, right? Even when I was a kid, there were certain things, peaches. There was a season when you had peaches, and then you didn't have them anymore, right? and so making the diet be more in line with when it gets into winter, there's not a lot of fruit, not a lot of sweet stuff. So you get rid of all the sugars and all of that kind of stuff. And the heavy carbs, keep it down to, if you eat meat, just very simple meat and a lot of green vegetables, right? In the spring, it's different. So so you can look into different ways in which you can adjust your diet, right, as well, because we don't do this in the West, right? It doesn't matter what the season is. I keep eating the same thing because I can go to the grocery store and I can get it. And now I can get tomatoes year round, I can get peaches, I can get anything year round for the most part, right? Which is not part of the natural rhythm of the system. So, and you simply may need to do less, spend more time reading, right? Also turning out bright lights in the room, sitting with candles, right? Which would be more conducive, more natural to the body. Now these things, I'm just kind of, I'm not an expert on this kind of stuff. And there probably are some people here that are. It's just kind of in my own experience, watching how life works, and how much better I feel when I am kind of adjusting myself to the Tao, right, to the natural flow of things, and recognizing that there are seasonal shifts that take place in the body, right? So in the winter, you want to spend a whole lot more time snuggling and loving, right? Reading, doing things inside, play an instrument, right? So that a depression doesn't arise. There can be a lowering of energy, but if there's not a sense that there's something I should be doing, right? That I'm just completely in harmony with the rhythms that are happening. There's not a place for it to become a depression. It'll just be a different way of being, and the more that's accepted, the more that is actively engaged with you. I think you'll find that the depression about it will lift, but a different way of being in this time will emerge. It'll be extremely satisfying and natural. So, how's that? How's that, Karen? See if that helps. Kundalini 644. Hi to you. I think you might be new. I don't recognize that name from before. There's Penny. There's Penny, who's actually just upstairs. Lily, how is it that things learned, for example, in this satsang, get integrated into experience? And how does it interact with practice? Is practice necessary, or just listening to these concepts enough? Beautiful question. As I switch legs, I can get pretty limber with one, but two, no, can't do it. Let's make sure the mic is close enough. Practice is necessary. Yes, it's absolutely necessary because it's experiential, right? My job is to point you in a direction that you will walk. To do that, I have to use concepts. I have to use abstractions and metaphors. Sometimes it'll be a story. Sometimes it'll be a joke. Sometimes it'll be some very precise use of words. But it's always to point you back to your direct experience. What are you experiencing in this moment? And the key to the practice, at least the way I teach it, be it inner reconciliation, EFT, which is more therapeutic, and meditation, predominantly at this phase, the practice is coming to discern in your own experience, through your own wisdom, that what is happening, what you're actually experiencing, and all of the thoughts about what you're experiencing are not the same. That the thoughts are inaccurate. They're an interpretation based on past experience, based on your education, based on what other people have told you, right? All the stuff we've learned to say that something in your life happening means XYZ. And then so when it happens, we immediately go to XYZ, right? And assume that's what it is. And then life doesn't work quite well. So when I'm pointing to these concepts, I say, here's what you do. You look, any feeling you have that comes up, right? And you'll notice how whatever you feel, or an event that takes place in your life, you'll notice how there's an automatic response internally to interpret it according to a preconceived idea. That is the concept of the experience, right? The sum, you could refer to that sum total of all the ideas and beliefs about the experience, including all the reactions, is the concept, right? The experience. And then there's my concept of the experience. The mission here, what practice is designed to do, is to dispense with the context or the concept and be purely in the experience. So the experience, you can see it as it is. And when that happens, being freed from these concepts, a completely different way of understanding this can emerge. But this way of understanding will not be based on preconceived notions. It will be based on your individual experience of the actual event itself. You'll become clearer and clearer as to what is really happening. And that clear seeing is what is referred to in Buddhism as right views, seeing it as it is, not as how it's interpreted. That takes practice. Nobody gets that like that, right? Because we're all used to, see, an event takes place, any event in your world. I don't care what it is, the arising of a feeling, somebody says something to you, something at work, you see, a car racing past, everything event, we're constantly bombarded with the experiences through our senses. Right? Something happens and immediately, instantaneously, there's a reaction to it. It happens so fast that we think that the event and our reaction to it are one and the same. They're interlocked. This is absolutely the way it is. And so our thought about it becomes it. And we talk about it as this is what it is and all that. We talk about it with others, has a common experience of it. And so we're constantly engaged in the concept. The fact of the matter is that this is not absolute, that the event, the reaction is programmed. It's a programmed response, just the way you hit a particular key on your keyboard and it produces a particular character on the screen. It's a program. I could program the computer and hit that key. It did a completely different thing on the screen. In fact, it happens all the time, right? Hit a key, it puts up a number. You hit the shift and that key and it puts up another number. You press command, right? Or alt something and you press something and it does something else, right? So there's no magic about the key. There's no magic about the reaction. Your reaction to an event is all programmed responses, including your thoughts about it. The practice is beginning to see that, so this happens. Oh. And just realizing that that's the case, that no matter how you're reacting to something, right, and no matter how long you've been reacting to it, you can free yourself from any reactive pattern, any habitual pattern. And I don't care how deeply ingrained it is, you can free yourself from it. First, recognizing that my reaction and the event are two different things. I was programmed to react in a particular way. I don't have to. Just that thought itself brings awareness to this. Now, you say with it at first, that's not enough. That won't be enough to change it, right? Because it's instantaneous. But if you stay with it long enough, this does begin to happen. And you'll begin to actually see the tiny little gap in between event and reaction. And the more you stay there, the bigger this gets. Till at some point you can begin to intervene and actually choose a completely different path. Now, what path you choose will be based on the wisdom that you've acquired, and that's another role of satsang, is to show you a wisdom that allows you to start choosing better paths that are more natural to you, that are not programmed. They're not the result of conditioning, that they're actually coming out of your true nature. And this is how your reactive patterns start to reflect who you really are. Now, there's a weight there that comes from trauma and all sorts of things. There's a reason why these things are there. And so creating that separation requires the practice sometimes of self-inquiry, of examining these particular patterns and recognizing that they were there because I was afraid, right? I was traumatized. I was a little kid, right? And they just become programmed in there so that it doesn't seem like I had any alternative. You do. But really exercising that and bringing that to the point where it begins to colonize the whole energy system and this freedom begins to appear, that is, that takes practice. I call that practice inner reconciliation. You're reconciling with all this stuff, but it's practice of wisdom, it's meditation, it's self-inquiry. And there's first, it simply starts with what I call the yoga of allowing, to just watch and allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling. Just beginning to watch how you react and trying not to react in that way, right, is an incredibly powerful position. It's also very difficult It's very uncomfortable because something happens, you're programmed to want to act in a particular way. But if you just feel the trigger to do that, but actually don't do it, boom, you've done this. And you're in the most powerful position there is now. But it'll take time and practice and encouragement and usually a teacher, somebody to help you make sense of it all, because there's a lot of subtlety to it. So thank you, Lily. Beautiful question. Patricia, hey, beloved G, Penny, Audrey, my friends here. Yes, I'm sorry you're ill. Sorry you can't be there with you. Accepting and allowing over here in Vancouver. Much practice makes perfect. Wonderful visit, G. Thank you. Thanks, Patricia. Very sorry you couldn't make it. Faith. Hey, my Sheik. Thanks for your time and your love. How can we distinguish between giving up a preference and opening for more options? I love you. I love you too, Faith. You never have to give up a preference. I've never said it. I never will. Matter of fact, you can't give up a preference, right? You just have to notice that they're not absolutes, right? Your preferences change over time. When I was when I was 10, my preference was, go with my friends over to the pump house, which was like this vacant lot near where I lived, and play baseball every afternoon after school till it was too cold, till it snowed, right? That was my preference, right? 5 years later, it was girls, right? I mean, it's just, that's the preference. I'd rather be doing that than playing baseball, right? Now, they just evolve over time. You don't have to let go of them. As a matter of fact, your preferences are part of your freedom. Acknowledging that I prefer this over that and giving yourself permission to do that, knowing that it's not an absolute. Now, what it means by you're never letting go of or getting rid of or giving up a preference. What we let go of is our attachment to it coming about in a certain way. If I acknowledge I have a preference for this, there's no suffering in that, right? Yeah, I have a preference for a lot of things. I prefer certain foods over other foods. The company of certain people over other people. Driving a particular kind of car, you have to have the preferences, right? You couldn't order a meal if you didn't have preference. You couldn't buy a pair of shoes, right? So what's the problem then? Well, the problem is if I don't get that preference, I'm unhappy. There's a problem. In that moment, you have suffering, right? The preference doesn't cause suffering. It's saying that if I don't receive that, I'm unhappy. If I do, I am happy. Now I've attached my well-being to something I don't have any control over, and that is, can I fulfill this preference, right? So you go into a restaurant, and I really have my face fixed for the tofu salad, and they don't have that. They have a papaya salad. Oh, papaya salad again, right? I can either grumble and say, or I can say, all right, no tofu. How about whatever else is on this? I'll have the pad thai, right? Then it's no big deal. Then I'm hanging out. I'm enjoying the company of people, right? There's no suffering, right? The preference is there. I can't have that. How about this? No? How about this? No? How about this? Oh, okay. I'll take that. You can see it's only the attachment. But without the preference, you don't have any juice, right? You have your preferences as to where you want to be living, the kind of culture and environment you want to be living in. And you have every right to have that. Our desires shift and change over time, but they also motivate our lives. This is what I want, right? The spiritual power is recognizing that nothing I can get or not get touches my actual sense of well-being. When I attach my sense of well-being to some circumstance or possession or achievement or anything, I have made my well-being contingent upon something out there that I have no control over. And then I will spend my life trying to control it, right? Trying to win its approval or make it do what I want, and manipulate it, force it. I get into politics, right? So I can always, or try to be rich so I can always tell people what to do. Always control, right? That's what we end up doing. And it's impossible. It can't be controlled. Nothing. You can't control life. You simply can't do it. And the more you try to do it, the more you discover you can't. But what I can control is my attachments. I can't say, oh, my attachment makes me unhappy. Not the circumstances. The circumstances can't make me unhappy or not unless I insist that they be one way and they're not. But do I really control life? Right? Can you control what your next thought is going to be? So control becomes an illusion. You let that go. And now it's just preference. They're all innocent. They're all natural. There's a joy in it. There's even a happiness and a desire even before it's fulfilled. There's juice. There's energy. And of course, that's when you're not grabbing onto that preference, you're letting it grow. You're letting it develop. And that's what you're referring to by saying opening for more options. Because the preference is just an indicator. It's just a direction you have. A desire is just a direction you're going to go. Oftentimes, there's a sense of desiring something. When you desire something, your mind immediately jumps in to say, this is what I want, but maybe it's not. Think of all your desires, preferences as being a seed you've planted into the ground, but you don't actually know what the plant is. You know it's something, and it's something good, right? But it's got to grow for a while. And so you water it and like a little shoot comes up and, oh, maybe that's oh, no, now it's, oh. And after a while, it develops and you discover what it is and then it bears fruit, right? If you've taken care of it. Same thing with our children. We don't know what they're going to become. The newborn, I'm looking at my newborn granddaughter. She is now, a month old. Very different. Just saw her last night. Very, very different. But what does she do? She lays there. She eats. She cries and she poops. That's it. What's she going to be? Who knows? Who knows? You just love it. You just love the whole thing in discovering. And every day, new things emerge from my 5-year-old granddaughter now. Right? She's just. This personality, this very big personality is emerging, and it's just a delight to see. I'm getting to know her. Think of your preferences and your desires and your aspirations as parts of you you're getting to know, and give them that space. And what you're doing is you're opening them up to providing the best possible environment you can for them, these internal energies, to develop themselves totally, just the way you want to create an environment for children in which they can blossom. They can be everything they want to be. And we want to create a culture and a society and political and economic systems where everyone can blossom and be everything they're capable of being. So hopefully that answers it for you, Faith. Rouse Gray, when a leaf leaves, what's left? The potential for the next leaf, I guess. Daryl Sanders, hello. Hello to you, Daryl. Nazrin, finding a pattern such as freezing is enough to start dissolving, or should I reconcile with it? Plus, I have no resistance to it. Thank you. Finding a pattern such as freezing, is it enough to start dissolving, or should I reconcile with it? Well, first be with it, notice it, and just really be grateful for the fact that you're now seeing it. Oh, this is frozen. Okay. Well, what unfreezes anything? Warmth, right? So to reconcile is not a process in the sense. Grab the spirit of it. The spirit of it is love, right? The only reason I'd want to reconcile with anything or anyone is love, right? I'm wanting to establish a relationship of love, appreciation, of empathy, right? And so you find a frozen aspect of yourself. First thing you do is simply, wow, there it is. Begin to just surround it with love and light, and which is allowing it to be there, just letting it. And you can then do a reconciliation with it. You can ask, what is it you need? Is there something you need me to do for you? Is there something I can help? Right? I'm going to create the most safe environment I possibly can for you, because I know you only froze because the environment wasn't safe. So the act of creating the environment is the act of reconciling. And then you can do a specific aspect of reconciling, which is inquire, right? And just being present with that feeling. Is there anything you have to say? Is there any way I can help? What do you need? Right? But the act of just letting it be there, feeling it, watching it move, right? And making sure that you're as free as you every time you become aware of the fact that you want it to be something else, you go, I see that, and consciously decide, I'm not going to hold on to that. It doesn't do me any good anyway. Right? And so you just keep taking your hands off of it with this open willingness to dialogue, right? And so the reconciliation, remember, inner reconciliation starts with the allowing, or just inviting, come on up. It's safe here. You can even be here and be frozen. It's okay, right? And the inquire is the second half, is another part of it. So it's all reconciling, whether you're just being present, whether you're inquiring, or if you're letting it integrate, right? Then you're just allowing it to integrate into the system, right? And just really cherishing all the ways in which it begins to affect your whole energy. That whole thing is the reconciliation. You are harmonizing two things that were in opposition, right? That's reconciliation. And so it's frozen because it was in opposition to the environment. You are now creating a different environment that it doesn't have to be in opposition to. That's right. So it reconciles. Does that do it for you, Nazarene? Delightful. And since you have no resistance to it, just stay with it. Just stay with it. It's always the best place to start. You don't have to inquire, right? Because ultimately, what heals everything is unconditional love. It's the only thing it ever has. It's the only everything that ever will. Okay? And with that, it finds everything it needs, because that you've created the space. Once you've created the space of unconditional love, the rest takes care of itself, right? The inquiry will happen very naturally, if it's even needed. If it's even needed. Hello, Steph. Namaskaram, Ji and friends. Strange. Sometimes learning from mistakes, which lead to pangs of remorse, seems to have the most profound effect. Sad that one's ignorance is so strong that this has to happen. But before knowledge can be integrated fully, and therefore wisdom can unfold itself. Love from Germany. Yeah. It is sad. But it is the only way we learn. There's no such thing as somebody who gets through life without making mistakes. And when I say a mistake, I don't mean, I should have, it's like, I wanted to get here and I ended up here. Like, I blew that opportunity. The kind of ones I'm talking about are the ones that just tear your heart out. The ones that just reach right in. They all start from ignorance. And I could say that with absolute assuredness, because nobody gets up in the morning saying, okay, how can I mess up my day more today? Let's see, what can I do to really fuck it up? Nobody does that. Right? We all believe that what we're doing is going to be the best. It's going to bring us what we need, or it's going to avoid something we're terribly afraid of, right? That's the ignorance. And there's only one way to discover it is ignorance, and discover the consequence of ignorance, and that is to experience the consequences of ignorance. And that means that your heart has to get broken. You have to have that feeling of enormous loss, even irrecoverable loss, right, in order for it to penetrate. Right? When we recognize that we've done something that can't be undone, hurt someone that we can't take it back, can't unring that bell, hurt ourselves, and we can't take it back. That there are things we can do that cannot be altered, right? There's no going back. It drives home the most significant lesson in life. And that remorse is the birthplace of wisdom. Without that, it's theoretical. You know, following the 10 Commandments or whatever moral code you want to put out there does not make one moral. Right? Being a lack of opportunity does not make you moral. Or following some code because you're afraid of the consequences that somebody said is going to happen doesn't make you moral, because they would just be theoretical. But if I take one of those laws and I break it and I find there's no consequence at all, then I realize it's not really true, right? This was just a cultural thing. It was about the preservation of the culture. It had nothing to do with morality. It had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with life, right? It's a preservation of this artificial creation we call culture. But if I do something and I see the natural consequence of it come back, right? It costs me something. Well, that's not a morality that has arisen out of some theoretical list of rules or some kind of cultural imperative. Life itself has taught me this, and that's an absolute, right? That's not something that's just the result of a bunch of rules people got together and made up. This is life. This is reality. And that hits home. You know, if it's possible to make recompense, by all means, you know, we should try. We should try to do our best, right? To try to undo the damage that's been done. Recognizing full well that that's not the ultimate. The ultimate is to learn, is to grasp. I mean, if it can, wonderful, right? If it can't, right? You can't kid yourself in this. You can't do a reframe on it. You can't, try to distract yourself from it. You can't try to couch it in nice terms. We have to feel it. I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that much of the wisdom that I've acquired over my life has come as a result of doing things that I could not undo and recognizing it. And eventually, over time, learning to not do it again and to see it coming when it is. This is kind of the wisdom that doesn't need to be shocked anymore, that doesn't need to be hit upside the head with the cosmic 2x4. To integrate that wisdom fully is just is simply the total acceptance of it exactly as it is, and whatever the consequences might be, right? And the deep desire for freedom, the deep desire to know what the truth is and to live it, right? And also to recognize that the ultimate attainment of life is not some idyllic state. It's not some perfect relationship between people. It's not a certain attainment of certain things. Right? The gaining of that wisdom opens the door to the deepest kind of freedom. And the deepest kind of freedom is the sense of well-being that has no dependency on anything external. It is the perfect sense of well-being that is completely undisturbed by anything going on around it. And that's not indifference. That state of completely self-sustained well-being is extremely sensitive to what's going on. It feels profoundly. It feels the pain of others. It feels the losses and griefs of others. But it has found within itself, because it is not attached to any particular outcome, it finds itself in a position that it can actually transmute the suffering of others. It is in this place that sense of well-being that is not merely selfish, but wants all beings to share in this well-being. It literally takes on the sins of the world. It is the bodhisattva path. It is that which recognizes the wound in all of us, and through life experience, when the wisdom, this is why wisdom and compassion are one and the same. When you see it, and then you recognize that everybody is going through exactly the same thing in one form or another, even the most apparently dense and ignorant fool, to the one who is just struggling with with their own fears and their own sense of being confined, and the world's is going to hurt me because we've been conditioned to be that way, and perhaps have always been treated that way. That's just the heart breaking open for the compassion for all beings. Because even the one that seems the most harsh, bitter, angry, indifferent, cruel, the tyrant, the politician, all these, they are suffering. They are suffering. They don't know it. They don't recognize it as such. They're getting these little baubles and things from the world that make them think they're somebody. But they are suffering in exactly the same way through that ignorance. So I could go on about this for a very long time, because it is so essential. It's so essential to the spiritual path. The spiritual path, as somebody asked me before about, practicing it. How do you integrate it? How do you bring it in to the whole system, and not just be spiritual concepts, right? There was a time when I just completely held to those concepts. I was just dogged about it, lived like a monk, deprived myself of everything, and it didn't work. Something else was necessary. I had to allow the sensitivity of the whole system to happen, and that's what opened the door to the wisdom that was compassion, and the compassion that was wise. Anyway, I could go on for a long time, but there's not that many questions. We're good. This is very good. Very, very good. So, nothing's ever lost. Not really. What appear to be mistakes aren't. And just a willingness to be truly present with all of your feelings, to really take them all in with the deepest desire to be free, to be true, to be loving, to be a full human being, and not just lick my wound, learn my lesson, move on. But no, I don't want to just move on. I chose that a long time ago. Where times like, okay, I see this now, I wanted to move on, and no, I don't want to move on. When On that night in the mythology of Jacob, where he becomes Israel, he's wrestling with an angel, right? Now, Jacob was not a good human being. He was in fact, the whole story is really quite fascinating, but there's only one little point I want to make. So many of you were familiar with that. His brother was coming to kill him. He divided all of his goods into in half because he had 2 wives and a bunch of different stuff, right? To hopefully one of them would get away, and was at the back himself. But that night obviously troubled the entire night as to what was happening. There was an angel that appeared to him, and the angel, and he had a wrestling match, wrestled with him, struggled with him all night, struggling with this pain, right? This is what it's referring to. Finally, insight begins to dawn. And the angel says to him, "Let me go. The day is breaking." And Jacob says something that he would never have said before, and which is kind of key to the depths of this. He said, "No, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me," which metaphorically means until you have transformed my nature. I am not letting go of this struggle. I'm not letting go of this pain. I'm just not going to dull it, right? I want to hear it in its fullness. And that's when the angel took quite a turn and revealed to him who he had been, the actual nefarious, swindling, scheming, dishonest man he had been. And it was even in shock he gets shown this ugly part of his nature, and his nature is transformed. And that's when he becomes Israel. It goes from Jacob, which literally means, the name Jacob literally means swindler, schemer, supplanter, and trickster. And his name is now changed to Israel, which means Prince of God or striver with God. Beautiful, beautiful metaphor. Totally mythological. Guy never existed, right? But that was the point. In that moment, he decided, no, I'm not, I just don't want this. I want this purged from me forever. That's a prayer. That's a deep prayer. And it can be. It can be. And interestingly enough, the next day when he instead of being at the back of all of his things, he's up at the front by himself and meets his brother, who swindled out of all sorts of things. And his brother sees him, falls on him, and hugs him, kisses him. Says, "I have plenty. I forgive you for everything." And Jacob says to him, "I've seen your face like I've seen the face of God, and you were pleased with me." So beautiful, so touching when it's seen in its mythological impact. So anyway, I will leave that for now. As you can tell, I could go on and on about this subject because it's the very heart of humanity. Thank you, Steph. Jay, Hari Om, G, and everyone. I could probably ask the same old questions as before, but it'll be a temporary satisfaction to the endless pit of the mind. The truth is already recognized. Yeah. For you, Jay, it is simply, yes, being slow to pick up a strand of the mind. You're very smart. You have a lot of knowledge. You have a lot of spiritual knowledge. That will be very useful to you at some point, but it has to first be tamed, right? So it's not, I want to throw out all questions, don't have any questions, that, but this is good that you're stopping and slowing down. Okay, so what's really behind this question? Right? Is this Muji, my teacher, makes a distinction between knowledge questions and freedom questions. And always asks, beginning of satsang, he doesn't anymore, but he used to all the time, freedom questions, focus on the freedom questions, right? Knowledge questions are good and they're useful. And as you can see, I have a lot, talk about mythology, all sorts of knowledge, right? But the intent of that is always to get to the freedom question, right? And the ultimate freedom question is, who am I? Who is this I? Who is this consciousness that is aware of all of this? Is it just this person? Is it just this little, trying to figure stuff out? Or is there something much more? Is there something way bigger at play here? So thanks for the self-restraint. Good friend, Liz. That's so good and true. Oh, thank you, Liz. I don't know which one you're referring to because you wrote that over an hour ago. Jack Melamed. Hello from Colombia. Oh, hello, Jack. Good to have you. Good to have you. That's so cool. Hello, friends. This is Johanna from New Orleans. Johanna? You're in New Orleans now. You're not in. Oh, it's the same Johanna. Maybe a different Johanna. It's just one in Mexico too. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, hello, Patricia in sunny LA. Good to see you, Sean. Thanks for the explanation of time. Much appreciated. Is there a difference between mind and memory then? No. Memory is just a particular thought. Mind is nothing but thoughts. Take away thoughts, there is no mind. Memory is a thought. Nothing more. Right? We can look at the experience of memory, and in memory, the only thing you can find is now, which is infinitely aware at all times of all things. Right? That has nothing to do with time, and it is nothing really to do with memory. Right? Memory is a tricky one. Memory is really a tricky one. Right? Because here's what happens. A thought arises, right? Then another thought arises, goes, I recognize that thought. And then another thought says, that's a memory. Right? If some thought arose and there was the thought and feeling it was a memory, but it wasn't, you would think it was a memory. And there's no way of knowing. Memory is incredibly fragile. It's amazing how many convictions of people in prison were overturned by the DNA evidence that had multiple eyewitnesses. It's been proven over and over again. Memory is absolutely fraudulent. It is completely untrustworthy. Because I remember that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. So you can't use that as any kind of measurement, right? For when we're trying to assess things. So instead, you just kind of, I remember it. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. Right? It really doesn't change much. And from the point of view of if it's like an unpleasant memory, you don't even need to know if it was a memory. It's an unpleasant thought that's having a particular reaction. You go into the reaction and you're good. So anyway, I'm not going to go off too much on memory. I only have like 20 minutes left. A lot of talking, and I've got to do a recording session where I'll be talking for 2 hours. Well, hi, Mary says, that's so cool. I have a message, GP. A question. I'm noticing that intense pleasure and intense pain are felt very similarly in my experience. Yet I crave one and run from the other. I can guess, but can you explain? Well, yeah, they are. Well, obviously, pleasure is what I like. Pain is what I don't like. Pain and pleasure, if you look at them from a very primitive level, from a very physiological level, they have a very specific function. Pain is get away. Pleasure means move towards. Right? It's a very effective system because it, in fact, has made us survive, right? I move towards the pleasant stuff, right? Food, shiny objects, a mate, right? Very nice. And away from the painful stuff, saber-toothed tigers, fire, right? And so it has a very natural function about it, brings about particular kinds of reactions in the system. Now, as you're developing spiritually, we begin to see that they both are simply different vibrations of a common substance, and that substance is consciousness, and the experience is being experienced from a different place. From this place of the neutral, you might say, experience that is pure consciousness, of different vibrations, there's going to be, in a sense, a pleasure or a happiness or a joy in all of it, in the mere feeling of it. Experience itself is joyful. And I don't mean the elation which comes from pleasure. I mean just the mystery, the miracle, the awe, the bliss, the ananda of life, right? The feeling of life, right? The mystery and miracle, the awe of conscious existence, of existing and knowing I exist. The very fact that we can talk about this quality of experience, which we call, pain, this one we call pleasure, when they are both fully embraced and fully experienced in their, as you said, in their intensity, you feel joy in all of it. Somebody who's gone through extreme grief and has actually been fully present with the grief finds the strange paradox of joy in it, because it's real. There's just a joy in the real. When I'm experiencing life as it is, there's a joy in that. That's really all I can say about it. And it's not, normally we think of joy as the happiness that arises out of us experiencing pleasure, that which we preferred, getting what we want. And yeah, that has a very characteristic experience. Yes, and it's wonderful, right? You find that thing you've always wanted. It's ecstatic, right? The opposite of that, which we don't want to experience, which is what is called grief, right? But it too has within it that same essence. So if you look past the ecstasy into that underlying feeling, there's a sense in that of just being connected to yourself, of experiencing itself. And when you're talking about ananda, the sense of bliss or pure stillness or pure experiencing, you're experiencing the joy of life itself, the joy of simply existing, the joy of being, right? The nature of being itself, because that's Satchitananda, being, consciousness, and bliss. They are one. Being is bliss, right? And of course, if being and bliss, there has to be a consciousness of it. So you can't separate them at all. So being itself is a joy that then experiences the full polarity of what experience is possible. And it's going to be from the most ecstatic experience to the most grievous, right? And yet the joy, the ananda of pure being remains, is always there. It's, it's like listen to a great piece of music and it may take you to a very tense place, a very, the tension is building, or like a really great movie or play. It takes you to this place, but then it explodes into the final resolution. And there's just this enormous ecstatic, right? But you have to have the whole bounce of it. You have to have the roller coaster or you wouldn't know it, right? And yet at the root of it is something that is aware of both, that is not just blank, is not just neutral, it's not cold. It is the indescribable joy of being itself. That's the only way I can put it. And it manifests itself in all of our pleasures and our pains. They are, in fact, the manifestation of this field of pure Satchitananda, pure being, consciousness, bliss, which is the self. It's the joy of the self. It's the joy of you. It's your nature. Oh, so beautiful. Anyway. Oh, wow. Getting kind of emotional. Bernadette, hello to you. Karen, Yes, and definitely for more women in that spiritual field, be it workshops or satsangs or meditations, we need that female energy. My mission is to train teachers. It's not the kind of training, you get certified, a little certificate on the wall. Yes, and I want the more female ones are, the better. I have more female students than I do male students. But interestingly enough, on YouTube, we did the statistics, and I have more male listeners than I have female listeners. So I guess women are just more joiners. So come join us, Karen. Trying to create mentors and teachers. I don't want students. I definitely don't want devotees. I want teachers. I want the people who say, I don't need you anymore. And because what else should the teacher do but want to make more teachers? Even teachers that say, gee, you're full of it. I don't mind. Suzanne, Karen, I'm totally with you. Yes, I am too. I am too, ladies. I am too. Yes, this is the age of women. Okay? The patriarchal thing has been, well, it's a distortion of nature. It actually is. It emerged with agriculture, the sense of property and ownership, and so the protective nature of the male became more and more powerful, and became more and more, and cultures became more and more organized on the male model, which is hierarchical. Which, if you look at it primitively, men are, they were defenders, right? Joseph Campbell put it beautifully: women are life, men are the protectors of life. And so when you see this division of labor, you would see women, the world of women, which was the home, and that wasn't, our modern day of, the housewife. The home was the center of manufacture, made the blankets, all the tool, which is everything that need to be made. Men would make, spears and arrows and things like that, but actually so would women, blankets, all of that. And it was the long term was the purview of women. Multiple generations all living together simultaneously. The village raised the children, so there was this horizontal organization where people would take their place, and the younger one would be having the children, but be multiple generations raising them. And so it has a complete legacy, multi-generational thinking. Just the natural collaboration and organization would be the female way. Men out on a hunt, right? If you don't do your job, if you're not exactly where you're supposed to be, you die, or I die, right? When you're chasing an animal, for meat that's 5 times your size, right, or maybe 10 times your size, right? You got this little pack of guys. Yes, hierarchical, organized, do this, be this. It's very, very this moment. So you've got the feminine energy, and you got the masculine energy. That's just, obviously symbolized throughout the entire thing. But if you look at the history of mythologies, I mean, it got really distorted, way distorted, with the Abrahamic religions. The only religion where God does not have a counterpart, does not have a feminine counterpart. It became totally masculine. But that, in a certain sense, it made sense because this was a warrior tribe. And what did their gods say? I'm going to give you the promised land. Well, except there's one problem. There's somebody already living there. So you need to go in and kill every man, woman, and child. Now, that's not a feminine notion. Now, one could try to explain that and think of that in terms of the times. These were basically marauding tribes, right? Bedouins. It wasn't agriculture for these guys. Agriculture was going on. So hierarchy in that actually had its apex in the Abrahamic religions, right? Which was the solidification of the patriarchal way of being, to the total exclusion of the womb. They became secondary. Now, if you look at other more healthy mythologies, you find the equality of the polarities, this balance of the polarities, Shiva and Shakti, right? Masculine and feminine. Also, Kali is associated with the alter ego of Shiva, the masculine and the feminine. And in the Hindu tradition, it is the feminine principle that gives rise even to the masculine and to the gods, which in nature would be true, right? In the Abrahamic, only one where the male is a creator, right? And of course, it's also the only one where the God and creation are not the same. There's God and his creation. There's an absolute separation. And so the law becomes the relationship. And even the law going into Christianity and the acceptance of Christ is a relationship to this God, which you cannot touch yourself. Whereas in the Hindu tradition, that comes from a completely different place, God is immanent in God, and its creation are one. The womb of the universe. Everything is happening within the goddess, which corresponds directly to nature, right? This feminine principle as the womb of being must reemerge if we're going to save ourselves. The masculine will drive itself over the cliff, and it's doing it, right? It's doing it. I mean, how could you be so insane as to think putting a little more money in your already overstuffed pockets by destroying all life on the planet is a good idea, right? There's something fundamentally missing from that state of mind, and in its essence, it's its own humanity. It's recognition that it must serve something higher than itself, and that's the essence. The role of the masculine is to serve and protect the feminine. It is to serve and protect the innocent. It's to serve and protect that which cannot protect itself, and be willing to give up its own life to do it. That's the ideal of the masculine. And when that sense of what needs to be protected becomes the whole planet, it becomes all children, it becomes all beings, it becomes all animals, we'll have a chance. So this, for me, is the age of women. And I don't, as a man, I do not find that the least bit demeaning. I think what we're experiencing is not true manhood, but boys in men's bodies. This is the ideology of boys, not men. And I could go off on this a lot, and I'll be going off more about this in the classes I'll be teaching about the masculine and feminine. I don't know when they're going to happen, but within the next 3 weeks, I would think. So anyway, there's Remy. Hey, Remy. Hi, GP. Thanks for doing satsangs. My pleasure. Hello, Robin. Did I say hi to you? Curly with you. Yeah. Hello. Amazing explanation, said Lily. Felt beyond concept and experiential in the moment at certain points. Thank you. Beautiful. Yeah. I use concepts, but they're not coming from concepts. They come from the place that is beyond concepts, right? And so they have the DNA in them of the non-dual, of the direct, of the actual experience. And this isn't that complicated. Just feel. That's all it takes. Just feel. Rely more on feeling than on, it's like when Obi-Wan Kenobi put the blast shield on Luke's head so he couldn't see. He says, use your feelings, Luke. Use the force, Luke. Anyway, I'm glad you felt it, Lily. That's it. Rosario, thanks GP for this special satsang with the subject of love. Oh, you're so welcome. Liz Love, I'm always curious though, if in a relationship, don't you have to have boundaries? People don't walk all over you. Absolutely you do. The opening, the blossoming of a relationship, to the point where those boundaries can actually come down and you can have a level of intimacy that most never know, comes from trusting, right? But that trust can't be given. It has to be earned. It's a back and forth, right? When it's violated, it has to be recovered if it can. Sometimes it can't. Sometimes it can, and it can go deeper, right? And so it's not just I'm open to all relationships. That would be silly. That would be stupid, right? We have to. What happens in this inner journey is you become so sensitive to yourself. You become so aware of yourself. The conditioning falls away. So you're no longer making decisions and choices based on programming. These decisions and choices are coming from your own nature, your true nature, which means that you now have access to inner resources that you didn't have when you were just identified as this limited, conditioned thing, right? That opens up the door for you knowing when someone is trustworthy and the degree to which they are, right? And so you can interact with people on that level. Then there'll be the people that come into your life that are more trustworthy. There'll be people that come into your life that you're very attracted to, you're drawn to. There's a magnetism, be it romantic or however. And those obviously are the ones that we're drawn the most to. But this is where it really becomes necessary for a lot of inner work, right? Because we don't want to assume anything. We can get overwhelmed by feelings, right? But we also have to stay self-aware. We allow ourselves to be seen. We become a little bit more intimate. What happens in return? If it's responded to in kind, and the boundaries and walls are coming down simultaneously, and it's becoming increasingly safe, right, to get closer and closer. And you even get to the point where when someone recoils, that you can still hold the space for them because you recognize that there's triggers going on. When a relationship gets to that point of maturity, then you can actually hold the space for somebody else when they have fallen into the unconscious, right? Because if you continue to provide that safe space, they'll come out of it, right? Because this is where it all comes from. There's no such thing as a relationship in which you're not going to where he's not going to experience mommy issues and she's not going to experience daddy issues. They don't exist, right? To the degree that we're conscious of them, to that degree, a relationship can actually be a vestibule in which they can be healed. And granted, that's a very mature relationship, and before you get into that, you have it all starts with our own inner work. So you have to the boundaries are necessary for as long as they're necessary, right? When it becomes totally safe, there's no boundaries anymore, and eventually maybe the boundaries can come down again, that you can have an experience of intimacy that can blow your mind, right? But that's right. When I am allowing myself to be seen, and that being seen as I am, warts and all, is totally accepted, and I'm allowed to be that, that's a transmuting love can include romantic love, but goes way beyond it. So that's my romance advice for today. GP's romance column. Oh, thanks for all you do in your Satsang. Oh, you're very welcome, man. Yes, for coming up here on 2 hours that I do have to kind of wind it down here. Lisa, GP often shares, don't swim with the sharks. This will help you not to allow others to walk all over you. Discernment, yes. How trustworthy is somebody? To that degree, the boundaries can come down, right? And of course, what we really want in life, we may not get it. You don't have to have it. But what we really want in life is to have that kind of relationship with another where those boundaries can come all the way down. But of course, that means they have to come down for you too. We have all the boundaries with ourselves. That's what inner work is all about. That's what self-inquiry is all about. So, David and Elaine, thanks, GP. How are you doing, everyone? Envious that we don't live in Vancouver in this moment. I'm coming to England. I'm not sure when. I know there's still a lot of lockdowns going on, but I'm coming to England. Thank you, wonderful, uplifting satsang. You're so welcome. Alexandra, thank you, GP from Ireland. You're so welcome. You knew. I'm not sure I've seen that name before. Maybe I have. I know. Liz, perfect GP. Thank you for that. Just what I needed to hear. Great. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right, everybody. Look at that. Right at the 2-hour mark. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. I love you all. This has been really wonderful. Till next time. Namaste.